Hey guys, and welcome to the Rants channel, your home for NFL projections, predictions, and of course, your periodic rant. And in this video, we're going to be bringing back What If? A video that I made a few months ago. I made a video on What If that was based on the NFC South. I'm going to be covering the NFC North. And what If is, I'm going to be basically giving a what if scenario for every single team in the NFC North. And I'm going to talk about all four teams, but before I do, if you're new to the channel, please make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with the Detroit Lions. They are the first team that I am going to start off with. Now, my question for you, what if the Lions didn't fire Jim Caldwell? That is the million-dollar question. Jim Caldwell was the head coach of the Detroit Lions following the firing of Jim Schwartz, who took over, of course, after the infamous 0-16 season that Rob Marinelli did. Now, Jim Schwartz wasn't horrible, but he faded out near the end of his tenure. Jim Caldwell actually did a pretty decent job. I mean, was he, winning coach of the year? Was he, top of the conference? No, but he made the Lions at least look relevant. And his losing season, his one bad year where the Lions were 7-9, that's still a better record than they've ever had since they fired Jim Caldwell. The best they've done without him since then is 6-10. And firing Jim Caldwell, in my opinion, was the old, that didn't age well. And I understand the Lions probably wanted to change, but it just brings me back to when the Bears fired Lovie Smith after a 10-6 record. It just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. It didn't make sense at all, to be honest with you. But I mean, the Lions, honestly, there's not enough all due respect to Lions fans, there's not enough playoff scenarios to ask what if in terms of the playoffs, but that's a big what if question that still irks me to this day. Jim Caldwell probably could have lasted a couple more years in Detroit. I'm not sure if it would have gotten any better, but it certainly wouldn't have gotten any worse. But that is a scenario to think of for the Lions. Next is the Chicago Bears, the infamous terrors of the Midway. Now, my question for you is, what if the Bears won the 2010 NFC Championship? Now, that one, you could say, is a bit too obvious now. There's a lot of different ways we can look at the Bears. They are, of course, one of the oldest teams in the league. They were in the 1940s under George Halas. They were, of course, the terrors of the Midway back then. That was when the Bears were really dominant. They weren't necessarily the best team in this division throughout the 60s and 70s like the Packers and Vikings were, but the Bears, of course, have made their own separate impact. Now, the 2010 NFC Championship was, of course, the year where they faced the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers ended up going on to win it and win it all against the Steelers in Super Bowl 45. Now, could the Bears have done that? I mean, realistically, their offense wasn't as strong at the quarterback position. I believe it was Jay Cutler. I think it might have still been Rex Grossman. I have to double check. It might have been Jay Cutler. But Aaron Rodgers was just on a roll that year. There was no stopping him. But the Bears were the home team, and of course, it only seems fitting that they lost the 2010 NFC Championship to the Green Bay Packers. And by the way, they have yet to be back in the NFC Championship since then. But what if the Bears were able to win it? Would they have gone forward to win it all against the Steelers? It's something to think about, and it might seem a bit of an obvious choice, but definitely something to consider. Next, speaking of the Packers, they are next on this list. Now, I do have a scenario to give you for the Packers. What if they won Super Bowl 32? Now, there's a lot of different ones that I could have done for the Green Bay Packers. What if Bart Starr didn't win Super Bowl MVP, or what if the Packers lost the one of the first two Super Bowls, or the very first one? Would we still have it be called the Lombardi Trophy? Would we still have Bart Starr be as renowned as he is now? I mean, no quarterback has won more Super Bowls in championships in Green Bay, if you want to get technical, than Bart Starr. And it really, really makes you think. But Super Bowl 32, this was actually the year following the Brett Favre-led Packers winning Super Bowl 31, obviously 31-32. But the Packers actually played the Broncos really tough in that Super Bowl, and the Packers could have won it. So what if they were able to do it? I mean, it almost seemed inevitable that Brett Favre would follow in Bart Starr's footsteps. Ironically enough, he would have also won back-to-back Super Bowls. And maybe Super Bowl 32 could have been the year that Brett Favre won Super Bowl MVP. We know that's the only difference between him and Aaron Rodgers and Bart Starr in terms of their Super Bowl accomplishments, minus the number of championships Bart Starr won. But besides the point, Brett Favre did not get the Super Bowl MVP. Maybe this was the year he could have done it. Maybe the Packers ended up winning one more before Favre, quote-unquote, retired. It's something to consider. And I'm sure a lot of Packers fans and Broncos fans, to a certain extent, probably think about that. And finally, last on the list, we have the Minnesota Vikings. And my what-if question, what if the Vikings won a Super Bowl with head coach Bud Grant? And that's really relevant because during the 70s, Bud Grant was really, really dominant. And I'm going to turn it over to a special friend that had a little something to say about the Vikings fans.
Well, we like the Vikings. What did you say? You're Viking fans? What the hell is wrong with you?
Well, I can understand Red Foreman being a little bit upset, but a lot of people might not remember this, but during the tenure of Bud Grant, I mean, he only had, with the exception of his rookie season, he only had one losing record throughout the 70s and 1968 and 69. The Vikings were actually really, really good. That was, I believe, at the time when the Purple People Eaters, as they were called back then, I believe, were on the Minnesota Vikings defense, and they were dominant through the 70s. Minnesota actually went to 4 Super Bowls, losing all of them. They were the Chiefs' opponent in Super Bowl 4, and if they had flipped that game or maybe one of the other Super Bowls, it would have really changed things up a little bit. I mean, Minnesota definitely was a team that had a lot of talent. They just got completely outmatched in Super Bowls. Whether it was Fran Tarkenton being the quarterback, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was him, if it was Joe Kapp. They got completely outplayed, and you can't really blame it on the Vikings. I mean, they had some really tough opponents. They had Dan Marino's Dolphins. They had Bradshaw's Steelers. They had Len Dawson's Chiefs, I believe. They had the Raiders with Fred Biletnikoff. They had some great teams that they were going against. They just got outmatched. But Minnesota, honestly, the reason that it's Bud Grant is because he was the head coach during that tenure, and he actually made the Vikings relevant. I mean, obviously the 80s is when things kind of started to fade a bit for the Vikings. They weren't nearly as dominant as they were during Bud Grant's early tenure from the late 60s to the 70s, but it is really important to wonder if the Vikings had pulled it off at least once for Bud Grant. I mean, they probably would have the same kind of memory as the 85 Bears, but it would still be pretty interesting to see if they could have pulled it off. And that's all I've got for you guys in this video. If you liked what you saw, please make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.